And it's the morning meeting. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you being part of our start of the day. This program is based on what the television networks do every morning at around this time. Everyone gathers from all the bureaus around the world and they preview what's coming up and then they offer some analysis. That's what we'll do. Sean, Dan, and I are going to run through everything for you in this period. And of course, as always, take your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, hands up. And we'll get to as many of you as we can. We appreciate all the participation, including new folks. We've had some great folks this week who've never been part of the platform before in an active way, and we love that. So thank you for participating. As always, peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace are what we're about here. So whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching here on the two-way platform, no personal attacks. People have strong feelings, and we're trying to help people deal with those. And we're not even against negativity, really. Just no ad hominem personal attacks, and try to have respect for other people and learn. And if the person talking is someone you don't agree with or is voting for someone different than you, what a wonderful opportunity to understand why that's happening. And as we keep saying, be prepared to lose. This is not an election where it's clear who's going to win. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. That'll be one of our big topics, is why it is that so many people in my life are now saying Kamala Harris is going to win. I don't predict. Don't think when I've said Trump's the favorite, I'm not predicting he's the favorite. My sources are telling me that. There are a lot of people now who think Kamala Harris is going to win. We'll talk about why that is. Daybook, then some new ads, and we're going to talk about that. Again, delighted everybody's here. Guys, how was Halloween?
It was fantastic. I was actually excited to see how many people, it wasn't many, gave out full-size bars. I fully confiscated those now, but it was nice to see, it's a tax. I was
Yeah.
teaching my kids about taxes last night. When they came home, I said, this is what the government takes. And I just started pulling it away.
Full size bars are obviously intended for the grown-ups. Dan,
That's right.
how was Halloween?
I was surprised. Ring pops were the most popular item in our bag this year, and I enjoyed picking up the wrappers all over our house this morning.
Awesome. It is one of America's finest holidays. All right. The vice president today, all of her events, she starts in Las Vegas, but all of her events are in Wisconsin. Janesville at 3:40 Eastern. Okay. Green Green Bay area, it's Little Chute, Wisconsin. I don't believe I've been to Little Chute. 7:05 Eastern. And then the Milwaukee area, West Allis, 10:20 Eastern time. 3 events. Saturday she's in Atlanta, Sunday she's in Michigan. Donald Trump events in Michigan and Wisconsin. He's going to Dearborn, which is an historic visit by a Republican presidential candidate, or maybe any kind of presidential candidate. I'm not sure why that is, but he's going to Dearborn. He's got a rally in Warren, and then at 4:30 Eastern, and then at 9 Eastern, rally in Milwaukee, Brew City. Saturday, North Carolina and Virginia. Tim Walz is in Michigan, 3 stops, Detroit, Flint, Traverse City. And then he heads west. He's in Arizona and Vegas over the weekend. J.D. Vance, Michigan today, North Carolina, 1 o'clock, Michigan, 5 o'clock, North Carolina. And then he also is west on Saturday, Vegas and Arizona. And Joe Biden, not as I had thought in American Samoa, but in Philadelphia, doing what he does. 4:30 Eastern time, an event in Philly, remarks on the administration's historic support for unions. All right, guys, let's talk about why it is that so many people in my life are now saying they think Harris is going to win. A lot of it's based on women voters. We all know that. If she wins, it's going to be powered by women. And the early vote in Pennsylvania, big Politico story that people are sending around, says early vote heavily women. So that's one thing that people are citing. Then the latest round, and it's amongst the last rounds of public polls, show an edge to Harris. Again, if you go through the methodology of them and you compare them to private polls, you'd say, even though their margin of error, they're misleading because Harris isn't really up in these states. But go ahead and put up the one that's got a bunch of poll numbers on it. This shows polls from Marist, Epic MRA, Emerson. All of them show Harris ahead. Harris ahead in Michigan, Harris ahead in the Silver State, Harris ahead in Pennsylvania, Harris ahead in Wisconsin. Trump, as this tweet says, not above 49 in any of them. Again, is this because Harris is closing strong? Is undecided's vote? We don't know. But that's part of why Democrats are feeling good. The last Detroit Free Press poll, which I think was included in that batch, so we don't need the other graphic. All of those show Harris up. In addition, her events have been very good. In addition, Donald Trump made a provocative, threatening remark about Liz Cheney. So Democrats are saying he's unhinged. He's going to turn off undecided voters. And finally, she's got a lot of celebrities at her event, which probably is not going to backfire at this stage, and it's building enthusiasm. So, Dan, is this a blue mirage, or is in fact these little bits of data creating not just the kind of hope and a prayer sensibility, but is it possible that Harris is actually moving into the victory here at the end?
Look, anything is possible right now, excuse me, in a race that is this close. I think, you said private data, Senate candidate data still continues to show an extremely tight, if not ever so slight, Trump lead, frankly, in almost all three states. But look, there are some green shoots that are beginning to appear. Obviously, I think everyone would agree you'd rather be up in public polls than down. It just creates optimism. It creates excitement. There's definitely the herd mentality that sometimes undecided voters break towards whomever they think is going to win because they want to be with the winner. But you are starting to see that the gender gap, more women are turning out than men compared to 2020 and 2022 in several of these swing states. You are seeing suburban turnout at a pretty high rate, and that is encouraging because Harris, the campaign feels like they're going to win a lot of these suburbs. Of course, the question is the margins. Where are they? And as the Politico story said, you are seeing older voters turn out, older Democratic voters turn out at a high rate. And, the Harris campaign is running ahead with older voters. Should they win them, it would be the first time in several cycles now. So there is some optimism. The other thing that we haven't mentioned is there have been some polls recently that have shown that Black voters may be coming back into the fold for Democrats and that the margins for Harris will be roughly equal to Biden. We haven't thought that would be the case, but obviously if that development occurs, you're starting to see kind of the pieces to the puzzle that could put together a squeaker of a set of victories in the Midwest.
So just to be clear, I'm not hearing from anybody who says Harris is going to win some Sunbelt states. They don't rule it out, but this optimism for Harris is predicated on exactly 270 electoral votes, the Great Lakes path. Sean.
Yeah, well, then let's talk about the Great Lakes path. Trump up 5 per echelon, Trump up 2 per Atlas Intel, both brand new this morning. Wisconsin tied.
We didn't show those because those are private polls that we could have shown those, but
no, I'm just saying. But I want to be clear that there's plenty of information out there. North Carolina, Trump is up 4 in Atlas. He's up 2 in Atlas in Georgia. Arizona, Trump up 4. Kerry Lake up 1. Nevada, Trump up 4. So, I guess the answer comes down, and I'm not, I agree with you. I think this is a tight race. I think we can all agree on that. But I'm just saying that, I think when you, not when, I don't want to put this, when the media puts out specific polls, you're going to get a response. So look, I think both sides are looking at information. They know it's tight. This is a get out the vote effort. This is a, we've all talked about this. This is where mechanics matter, where logistics matter. Getting out that vote, getting your people to turn out is going to be critical. And we head into these final few days, with each of the campaigns, making sure that they've got all the data on who hasn't turned out, who has turned out, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to
be. Sean, Sean, sorry, I just want to ask Sean 2 things to follow up. One is, what about the growing sentiment that perhaps Mar-a-Lago is too confident?
I think that it's not. Everyone that I've talked to down there is not that, and it's just, if you've been around Donald Trump, you know not to do that. When I talk to people outside the periphery, a lot of the grifter types, they feel great. They're exuberant.
Those are my best sources, the grifter types.
I'm sure. But I'm just saying that there's a difference between the people at the senior most levels of the campaign are basically warning against this. It's the periphery folks who are getting excited, and so it just depends on who you talk to.
And second, sometimes Donald Trump says things that the press says, "Oh my God, this is going to hurt him really badly," and it turns out it's either neutral or helps him. Is what he said about Liz Cheney, is that something you think he said on purpose to remind people that Liz Cheney is a supporter of Kamala Harris, or was that a mistake to make a remark about her being shot at?
It was off the cuff. I don't think it was. I mean, if you heard his discussion with Tucker, I don't chalk it up to anything more. He was asking. I mean, so the answer is I don't think it was planned. I don't think it was intentional. It's not helpful, but I mean, it also isn't. It's
So,
like
so it's not helpful. And I must point out, given that this election is going to be decided by how the male candidate does with male voters and how the female candidate does with female voters, he talked about a woman being killed or shot at. So it's potentially, I think, more than just unhelpful.
Yeah, I mean, if Harris had made a joke that Trump was going to be shot, I mean, the chat would be, going to 11. I also think like Trump lashing out about Pennsylvania and the fraud allegations, he kind of like when his head's spinning and he's upset and he's nervous, he tends to kind of like spit stuff out. And I read it a little bit as if he felt really confident, he would not be making those allegations in Pennsylvania. And I also think we talk a lot about trend lines. The trend lines in the Midwest have kind of stopped, right? Like there was this very slow burn down for Harris. And even my sense is in the private polls, it hasn't kept going further down. It might have, it's stopped. And so I just think from an optimism standpoint, Democrats are like, all right, the bottom hasn't fallen out in the Midwest. The public polls have kind of remained where they are a little bit. And, there are some signs of some nervousness on the other side, which we haven't seen in the last couple of weeks.
Just want to talk briefly about celebrities. You bring in celebrities to build bigger crowds, to do voter registration, and to get people to vote. There's a downside for the Democrats using celebrities. We've seen it before. The Republicans paint them as elitists. And she's someone who's trying to convince some voters that she's got policy chops, and these events are being dominated not by economists, but by celebrities. So I'm not saying this is the biggest deal in the world, but it seems a little celebrity heavy. And as Sean's pointed out multiple times, they're not performing, they're just there. But just briefly, do you guys think these celebrities is good, bad, indifferent? Just seems like a lot of celebrities.
I don't think it makes a huge, I mean, at this point, the voters, I think for the Harris campaign, young voters, perhaps they're resonating. But in general, I don't think anyone really cares about a surrogate. And the Democrats aren't really trying to win over working class voters much anymore at this point of the campaign. And that's who would always be offended of like, you're more, Hollywood than you are, Scranton.
Sean?
I think certain surrogates can be helpful if they have a constituency, but they're either going to be with them or not. I just don't. I mean, yes. I mean, would I go to something sometimes maybe to see, if J-Lo was singing or something like that, maybe I'd go but I don't know that anyone really goes, oh my God, I'm now that J-Lo has appeared at an event, I'm going to go vote for Kamala. So maybe a little excitement and enthusiasm, but that's at best.
Okay. Let me say one thing about all our programs. We're not going to talk about Mark Cuban and what he said yesterday about women and the incredible reaction from women around Donald Trump. We're not going to talk about the AP story about how the White House changed the transcript of what Joe Biden said. There's too many things to talk about every day. Oh, Sean, you want to talk about it? Those two we can. My point is, please don't criticize us for not covering everything every day, because there's not a news organization in the world that covers everything every day. There's too much going on. Sean, you want to talk about the transcript?
Well, I would just look. I'll leave it at this because I was hoping to talk about both of these things.
Yeah,
I think again,
all right, go ahead.
No, but I mean, look, I'm getting a ton of crap from some folks saying, "Oh my God, you lied." Da, 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 da. I never told the White House stenographer to. I mean, they went out and said that this was a grammatical mistake, and then forced the stenographer to change the transcript. For all the crap that I took and Trump people take, this is them going to the stenographer who complained and said, my job is to write what he says. They changed it. That used to be called lying. And I think
I'll push back on this, right? Okay. So there is a sanctity notion of you can't mess with the stenographers, that the political people shouldn't tell them what to write. But the president's claiming at least what he said, what he meant. And the White House had a political problem. And their point is, we talked to the man himself. Here's what he meant. It's not implausible. that's what he meant to say. It's not what he said.
But that's
what he
not the
meant to
job
say.
of the stenographer. It's not to interpret you. It's to write what
Well,
you
I
said. You don't get to
understand.
go back in court and
I-
say, Your Honor, I meant to say that they have a stenographer for a
Well,
reason.
you sort of do, because it's open to interpretation.
No,
Sean,
it's
you can't hear an
where was
apostrophe.
this, Mark?
You
You know
can't
what?
hear
For
you can't hear an apostrophe, Sean. You can't. You don't know whether an apostrophe was uttered or not. You just don't. It's not audible.
I mean, look, I'll leave it at this. I wish you guys were around when I was press secretary. I mean, this idea of here's what he might have said, here's what he meant. I was evil and it was horrible. And I mean, like, so
But thanks,
you know what?
but thanks
I'll
to,
leave
but
it
thanks
because I
to,
don't want to
but
dwell
thanks,
on it. But I just,
but thanks to the morning meeting, you're one of America's sweethearts. Dan,
yeah.
do you want to talk about Mark Cuban?
No.
No.
Look, I think
That one you can't, there's no stenographer that can change what he said on that one.
Well,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
funny. He
look,
put out a
I think-
clarification. He didn't really take it back.
Look,
I know.
I think I don't think anyone's going to cast their vote based on an apostrophe, an edit, or what Mark Cuban has to say.
I agree with you, Dan.
I think the combination of Mark Cuban and we'll never know for sure, but I think the combination of garbage by Joe Biden and what Mark Cuban said is going to rally the MAGA movement.
I'll put a pin in this.
Mark, the only thing is the MAGA movement is at 11.
No,
I mean,
I don't think so. So then they're going to they could go to 12 over this. Those are two remarks
but
that
you
the
only-
MAGA movement. There are
you only
two
get
remarks
one
that the
vote,
MAGA
right?
movement. I understand,
vote five times. Like
I understand,
think,
but those are two remarks that I believe will be spread far and wide in MAGA land, and they could get
I mean, I
people to
think
the
the
polls.
bigger thing is just this sense that, like, we keep talking about how the Democratic, message down the home stretch is to just bash the hell out of Trump, and like, I imagine we're going to see more, kind of misstatements here. To me, that is the bigger thing. Is just everyone is trying to find a new way to say he's awful and he sucks and he's weak, and that is your. But I just think if we're talking about undecided voters.
No, but we're also talking about
let's
talking about energizing the base.
Hold on. It's not just the base, though. It's not the base. I mean, with all due respect, and I'll put a pin in it and end it here. We are on day 6 of national television talking about a stupid comedian telling a bad joke, and yet we can't talk about Mark Cuban insulting all women. We can't talk about the president of the United States going after 75 million Americans, but we can talk about a bad joke that might affect the Puerto Rican community in Pennsylvania. I mean, for goodness sake.
Are people
Yes,
still talking about the joke?
And by the way, I will tell you this again, anecdotally, and I don't, this is not, you know how many times women have said to me, God, I didn't want to vote for Trump, but they're pushing me in that direction. So it is affecting people. And I think as we come to this critical moment where there might not be a ton of folks out there, but these little things are pushing. And you just asked me a moment ago whether or not Donald Trump's comment about Liz Cheney will affect people. Well, you don't think, I know that for a lot of women, they found Mark Cuban's comments offensive. I know that for a lot of people, they said, God, I'm not a huge Trump guy, but being called garbage isn't offensive. They're pushing people over the fence. And so if we're going to talk about a comedian for 5 days, 6 days, we can talk about the president of the United States, and we can talk about their chief surrogate, Mark Cuban. And we can talk about them lying on a transcript.
But my point is the outrage. So I agree with everything you said, Sean. And Democrats like Liz Cheney and the comedian and like this is why we despise the guy and he's got to be defeated. And Republicans are saying like the double standard. My point is those people in the middle, I think, are not like fired up. They're disgusted. And I don't know if either's offensive comment. I still think it comes down to that, economy versus character issue. And I think they're all just, all of this is white noise. Now watch somebody say something that truly matters.
Yeah.
But
so there are some economic stats out today that are bad, on balance, and that goes in the mix. I will say, Sean and I can give you double standard examples every day. The lack of coverage of Cuban is outrageous, and I don't like generally.
Wait, what do you mean lack of coverage? It's all over.
It's not.
No, it's over social media.
Over. It's not
being pushed by the right.
Pick up the New York Times and the Washington Post. Watch the network news. Watch the liberal cable networks. They are ignoring one of her top surrogates saying something totally offensive, and then given a chance to take it back and really doesn't.
But
and
I don't think most
the mobilization
anymore. That's its problem.
Well, that's true. All right, quickly. And again, if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. We'll get to you shortly. 2 ads, closing ads that are compelling First, Donald Trump, 105, comeback. This is from the pack.
To this advertising.
4 years ago, we took a wrong turn and lost our purpose. We lost the strength that makes Americans who we are. If we dared to speak the truth, it was called hate speech, and our values were labeled shameful. That's when everything we care about fell apart. We surrendered our borders, our paychecks, and our courage. Our patriotism was called toxic. Men could beat up women and win medals, but there was no prize for the guy who got up every day to do his job. Now we're being asked to settle for the way things are. And we're wondering if America can make a comeback. We can, because we've done it before. When we get knocked down, we don't stay down, we get up again. We fight, we fight, we fight.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I'm...
All right, that's not the pack. That is the campaign. Dan, that ad has virtually no women in it. It's a very male-oriented ad. What do you think of it?
All right, that would be the only thing I find fault with. That's a great ad. Tugs right at the heart, patriotism, right on his message. It's a great ad.
Sean?
Concur.
Concur. All right, good. Let's look at the one of the closing Harris ads. I don't know if it's the closing Harris ad. It's called Think. 106, please.
We are witnessing a full-on attack on hard-fought freedoms.
Think about what you're trying to do to me.
The freedom to vote.
Let your mind go, let yourself be free.
The freedom not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body. We're not going back. Are you ready to make your voices heard?
Mr. Sean Spicer, what do you
Joy
think?
and vibes, baby. Joy and vibes. I mean,
Open on Joy and Vibes, close on Joy and Vibes.
No, well, but I will tell you this. Look, again, just being objective. I think they started too aggressive, too like, and that the rest of it, the other 55 seconds, I get why that's playing to their base, getting women fired up, but she comes out very. I thought it's a turn off right out the gate. It's like you should have been that fired up at the end, not the beginning.
Dan.
Oh, God. That's a great ad. First of all, who doesn't love Aretha Franklin? That is a great.
But that's
song.
my point. Is it Dan?
I'm
It gets you
bopping in the
fired up,
chair
but
here.
at the beginning, right? They missed
Yeah,
the first
but
beat.
again, who is your audience? That walks you through, the civil rights to Roe versus Wade. Their argument is all these rights that we've accomplished as a country that you might take for granted. 21-year-old, who may or may not be hungover on Tuesday morning and is like, do I or do I not get up and go vote? Like, it's all on the line. Things that you're not even thinking of may be a threat if this guy's back in office. I think that's a great ad, and you hum to it, so it's a great ad.
You also foot tap. You do a little foot tapping.
Yeah,
I will say that neither of those ads has any policy in it, and I know like it's an ad, but he's not selling like immigration. I mean, there's visuals of it, but
where
it's
we are in the campaign,
they're both more
with
vibes. Yeah.
96 hours out, you're not looking. I mean, look, I don't think the people they're trying to get out right now are going to see that ad. This is motivation on both sides. The people they're trying to get at, they're knocking on the door. They're not saying, hey, I hope that person sees it on ABC.
Yeah. All right. Time for you all to participate. Welcome in. Peace, love, and understanding. Don't forget, Leonardo, I see you're a Harris supporter from Georgia.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
correct?
supporter, but voter.
Voter.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell us about
I'll
that
take it.
and tell us what's on your mind as a Harris voter.
Yeah, Mark, I'm actually in Saudi Arabia right now. I wanted to get out of the country for the election, so I'm not coming back till a week after.
Did you really leave just to be out of the country?
It kind of lined up that way. I have some friends here, but I was like, I might as well take them up on it now.
All right.
Maybe it's a bit paranoid, but
Yeah.
just a little concerned. My question is related to the reason I voted for Harris in the end, even though I spoke with you last time and I mentioned border security is a big issue. And I think that Donald Trump, despite not being very specific enough for me on what he was going to do, the reason I ended up voting for Harris was I saw your concern that you expressed on Tucker about the mental health crisis that could come with a Trump victory. And, I'm in media sales. I'm in New York every other month. My girlfriend's a lawyer. And I see what you're saying. And it genuinely concerns me because the resilience of the average Trump voter, I believe, is higher than the resilience of the average Harris voter. And
Leonardo, I just want to interrupt you because I agree with you and I take heat for saying it. What do you base that on? Like what would be the reason for that?
for example, I have a colleague who's a lawyer, and he's like a 30-year-old guy who has a girlfriend or wife. And he just, I've seen, I think what you mentioned specifically is alcoholism. And I've seen the amount of alcohol that's being ingested by him and other people like him that are professionals, lawyers, accountants, has risen with the intensity of the election. And I'm not faulting them for it. I'm not mad at them or anything like that. But all I'm saying is, I think that the resilience of the Trump voter would protect a lot of the jobs that they do. But I don't know if we can really handle a country where, the lawyers and the doctors and the accountants cannot function. And it wasn't like that last 4 years, but it could be like that this year. It seems like they're a lot more intense this time around.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you think
Yep,
it's going to be as big this time, like the mental reaction, if he wins.
I do because it won't be a surprise. The people of America will have seen Donald Trump as president. They will have seen him as a candidate. They will have seen him say that Liz Cheney should face someone, face guns. They will have seen everything about him, and they will still have chosen him. And as I've said before, I think a lot of Americans who support Kamala Harris or oppose Donald Trump will find that to be a source of profound alienation from America and their fellow Americans, and that'll be very hard for them to deal with. Sean.
I actually think this is a really interesting topic and conversation. But here's the way I see it. I think if Kamala Harris were to win, I think Trump supporters, by and large, will be upset, pissed off, for a number of reasons. But I think we'll move on. I mean, I don't think you're going to see a massive, it's the other side that can't possibly fathom. Like I obviously want Donald Trump to win. I want Republicans to win up and down the ballot. But if we lose, it's America, and I'll fight hard again for 2 years for a midterm and then 4 years. And I think I speak for the vast majority of people when I say we will just double down and work harder. If the Harris side win, if Trump wins, I actually think like this whole story about anxiety, whatever, it's not our side that's got anxiety. I sleep very well at night. I mean, like I'll be upset, but I won't crack down. I think it's the other side that has got a major mental health problem if Donald Trump wins.
Yeah, Sean, I agree. I'm sorry, Mark, just wanted to say I agree with that analysis. And I'd say I voted for Harris at the top of the ticket and read all the way down. Mostly because if this is the figurehead that will hurt about, I'd say 30% of the country maybe are professionals, and they will get hurt mentally from this. Okay, we can give them that. And the best you could hope for is divided government as long as things move on. And I see a lot of comments that are mad at me. I don't want to say that I support Harris or Trump. I'm just saying I voted based on what I believe the country. You're the
most strategic voter we've ever had on. Dan.
Yeah, Leonardo, please don't the chat. Just you be you and vote for the reasons you think are best. And I think that I totally agree. Trump voters, I think if Trump loses, will say a little bit, because we hear this here and you see it in research, people have concerns with his character and conduct, right? I mean, even his most diehard supporters kind of cringe and chuckle at some of his antics. And I think they'll say, all right, that's why he lost at the end of the day. Democrats look at that same character and conduct and just do not respect or understand how anyone could do it, how anyone could vote. And so I think, to your point, one side kind of understands. I'll be charitable. I think most Trump voters respect Democrats. But my fellow party, unfortunately, does not necessarily feel the other way. And that is what will cause that, questioning of their country, and will be pretty painful.
So here's another thing, Leonardo, that I think is super important. I just wrote a piece about it. It hasn't been published yet, but I think it will be soon. So There are two reasons if Trump wins, that'll be a big part of it. One is he talks about issues that have appeal to tens of millions of Americans. The Democrats can't process that. They can't accept that. Second, the Democratic Party on a range of issues, cultural, economic, national security, has moved too far to the left for tens of millions of Americans. What will Democrats jump to instead of trying to process those two realities? Biden should have gotten that earlier. Kamala was a bad candidate on The View. They're not going to accept the reality that if Trump wins, those first two things are true. And by the way, they should accept that reality even if Trump loses, because if Trump loses, it's going to be really close. And nearly half of Kamala Harris's constituents will think that Donald Trump talks better to the issues they care about than she does. And half of her constituents will think the Democratic Party has gone crazy left. And someone in Kamala Harris's life hopefully will say to her, you should, even though you won, congratulations, you should be thinking about those two things, because that's a reality of half your constituents. Leonardo, what do you do for fun in Saudi?
You definitely can't drink. I think
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Well, you can, but
Yeah. No, it's been fun.
I'll text you some places if you're
Are
interested.
you water skiing? What are you doing while you're there?
I wanted to, for a few years, I wanted to check out because MBS opened up Medina to non-believers, so I wanted to check it out, even though I'm Catholic. And I'm visiting some friends from college that studied with me and came back, and they don't have to deal with our elections anymore. You know, they were just students. So
okay, have you signed up for the Farms Instagram account?
Yes, yes.
You signed up.
I watched the show yesterday. Yes.
All right, good. Signed up. All right, Leonardo, thank you for joining. Very, very
Thank you,
educational. And as I said, so far you're the front runner for most strategic voter. Sandy, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind.
Good morning, everyone. I'm in Minnesota. I voted when we could vote early, but watch our ballots go into the machine. And I've been a Trump voter all three elections, so I'm a fan. I grew up out in the country in Minnesota, so my family is those, outstaters that they talk about in the election. And but I'm in the metro area. I live in Hennepin County, which is, Omar territory. My question is around the early voting and how that's tabulated and how all of you view that information coming in. I've learned a lot on this platform regarding polling and internal polls and things like that. But what I haven't had a chance to fully digest and understand from the three of you is how the campaigns and how you view the early voting statistics. So that's my question. Thank you so much for having me on today.
All right, I'll say a few things, then kick it to Sean and then Dan. Every state is different in terms of what kind of information we can get from the early vote. So it's not uniform. You have to analyze each state separately. The only entities, as far as I know, that have analytics about the individual voters beyond what's publicly available are the campaigns, some super PACs, and the parties. In other words, they take additional data, consumer data, and other things. That gives them a better understanding of the people who voted early than we have, because we don't have that analytics. Okay, so they know more than we do about analyzing what's there. Finally, I'll say there's no data from early vote that's dispositive, no matter how overwhelming. If black vote dropped, 17% in Georgia compared to 4 years ago, part of that is there is imperfect data, no matter what state. But also, we don't have a baseline comparison that's meaningful. 2016 was a million years ago. 2020 was both a COVID year and a year in which the Republican Party said, don't vote early. So there's not nearly as much to learn from the early data as people would like. Sean.
So in the chat, I have no affiliation with this firm. I don't know them, but I came across a site. I just dropped it in the chat called l2-data.com/early return. So if you're on Zoom, check on the chat. If you're not on Zoom, I linked it on SeanSpicer.com. And you can click on any state and see the early return. So like I said, I don't know anything about this firm. I stumbled upon the site and they have it. So hopefully it's legit. That being said, there's two things. It's a great question because what we see publicly is how many people voted, right? And so we know this, and in the states, as Mark noted, that register by party, we know that, and we can compare it historically, and that's why Republicans feel bullish, because we know over from last cycle how many more people are voting early, right? Where this is big difference between what we see and what the campaigns see is that the data that they have will tell you, hey, that's an election day voter, that's a 404 person, that's a Sean Spicer or a Dan Turrentine.
Sean, tell people what a 404 it means.
So yeah, so when we say the word high propensity, the way that pollsters, when they talk about how they're, likely voter or whatever, they have we call a screen, right? So you either are newly registered, you got a 0, you've voted in 1 of 4 elections, you're a 1, you're a 2 if it's 2 of the last 4 elections, 3, and then obviously 4 of 4. So you're a high propensity voter or 4 of 4, a 4 of 4. And so when we talk about cannibalizing the vote, that means somebody who would have voted on election day, they're just moving their vote forward. So the same vote, it's like scoring a goal in the fourth quarter versus the first quarter. It still it still counts as 1. The difference is a new voter or a low propensity voter, somebody who just registered, or a 1 of 4. Getting them to vote is a big deal because that's different. Where the campaign data is very different than what we see publicly is that they may say, okay, Susie Smith is a Republican, but she is a never Trumper, and we have her coded in the system. So the campaigns can see both independents, Republicans and Democrats, and they'll have a score assigned to them, and they'll say, wow, yeah, that person voted early, and I know they're a Republican, but they're a never Trumper. Or yes, that person's a Democrat, but they're, for a variety of issue reasons, they tend to vote Republican in presidential years. So the campaigns have a much better window into who we are. And so that's why sometimes the confidence that one way or the other is seen is because the data that they have on the voters is different than what we see publicly. Because all we can tell is this many registered Republicans voted, this many registered Democrats voted. We don't know, are they election day voters that voted early? Are they never Trumpers that probably voted for Harris? They know that, we don't. And so when you can hear some of the folks that really go in on the data, that's what matters most. And so we're sort of, that's my 2 cents on that.
Dan.
In the interest of time, you both said it very well.
Okay. So Sandy, aggregate, part of why the kind of conventional wisdom is that Vice President Harris's path is the Great Lakes states and not the Sun Belts. Is the Sun Belt data in all 4 Sun Belt states is not great for Democrats. You could cherry pick a few things, but it's better in the other 3. Okay. And that's why the focus has shifted back to her notion of her having one path to 270.
Well,
Sandy,
and some of those low propensity Democrats in certain states in the Midwest are starting to turn out at high numbers, which gives them hope.
Yeah, correct. All right. So we've had a Harris voter, not a Harris supporter, but a Harris voter who happened to be a man, and a Trump voter and supporter who was a woman. And now we're duplicating that with bringing you 2 in at the same time, a male Harris supporter, female Trump supporter, just the way we're doing it currently. Nicholas, you're a Harris supporter. Where do you live?
I live in Albany. I actually came on earlier this week with my Harris shirt, but I don't have it on today.
Yeah.
I'm in Albany, New York.
Okay. And Jennifer, you're in Pennsylvania and you're a Trump supporter. Where are you in Pennsylvania? And is this your first, second, or third time voting for Trump?
I am located in Montgomery County, which is a suburb of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And this would be my 3rd time voting for Trump.
Okay. What's on your mind, Jennifer?
Well, I had actually a question for Dan. I am a longtime Republican, have been, and small business owner. And when I look at when Harris goes out and speaks, the numerous times she's already done it, why has no one in her campaign given her answers to these basic questions or determine what the strategy is? Because wouldn't you think after the first time you would have an answer and a policy? They would come up with something to give to voters. And the reason I'm asking that is because I have a few liberal friends, and we don't talk about politics, but I've asked them, and they are not voting for they're not voting for Kamala, they're voting against Trump. So they're going to put their vote in for Harris, but they don't really like her. They don't know what she stands for, but they just are never Trumpers and don't like her. So as just a citizen, I just like to know, like, common sense wise, wouldn't you give her something to give the American public?
Great question, Jennifer. Dan, explain that one.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the great stories that I imagine Mr. Halperin will tell after the election that Democrats have scratched their head about. Is, to your point, it's not just, in your gut like you want to hear, but all the research has told us, and the campaign has access to even better research that I know is telling them that the holdup voters have had since, let's say, Labor Day is kind of, who is Kamala Harris and where do you stand on the biggest issues? And for whatever reason, they went with, for those who remember 1996, Bill Clinton's famous like school uniforms, small ball, kind of like you're coasting to victory in 96, like don't rock the boat. They stuck with these really three small kind of, child tax credit, small business, and a buying a home credit, and never got into any of the macro issues. And because David Plouffe and that campaign is so smart, so data-driven and analytical, I have to think there was a holdup with the candidate. And I don't know whether it was, if I take a position, I'm going to piss somebody off, and her MO is just, I don't want to deal with headaches. Like, I need everybody. So the duct tape is going to be, have everybody a little disgruntled, and it's just enough to get over the finish line, or whether, there was something else holding her back. But it is a mystery, even amongst the most sophisticated Democrats. Why did, and it's not just on the economy, go across the board, look at Israel and Palestine and the West Bank. She has just stayed super, super cautious and said very little.
Jennifer, I believe the answer is she does not like to make difficult decisions under pressure. And I believe that's the explanation for almost the whole thing. Nicholas, before you tell us what's on your mind, what's your answer to Jennifer? Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I just wanted to say, if she can't make a decision.
Yeah, it's the job description for president.
Exactly. So, and I'm just like, is it that they think that we're stupid, like the constituency is stupid, or we just don't have common sense, or we just don't. I just think
it's not.
And I'm trying to figure it out, because
it's not that they'd like her to give better answers. She just doesn't like to make difficult decisions under pressure.
And Jennifer, she wants this not to be about her. She wants this about him.
Yeah.
And that is the disconnect that Democrats have thought.
Ironically, she's made it more about her by not answering. Nicholas, what's your answer to Jennifer's question? And then tell us what's on your mind, please.
About Vice President policies?
Yeah, why are her answers not that good?
I think it's a mix of things, to be honest with you. But actually coming on, I wanted to come on to speak about some of her policies. Right? Because I come on this platform, I see a lot of people who support President Trump, and that's good. Like I said before, my best friend's a Trump supporter. I get that. But I'm not a Harris voter. I'm a Harris supporter. Right? I truly do support the vice president, and I could go about her policies in terms of climate change, making sure we lower our carbon emissions, healthcare. She wants to expand the Affordable Care Act. President Trump and Speaker Johnson said he want to roll back the Affordable Care Act. I'm 24. I would not be able to be on my parents' health insurance if it wasn't for the Affordable Care. The economy. No one making under $400,000 will get a tax increase under Vice President Harris. President Trump, when he was in office, passed the biggest tax increase for billionaires and millionaires. His Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, almost all the benefits went to 1/10 of the richest people in America. So for the policies, Vice President Harris has policies that speak to me, especially when I want to buy a home. She's going to give me $25,000 credit to help me buy a home. She's going to make sure that I have more money in my pocket. So for the policies, I support her because of her policies, right? I do believe she's a more competent leader in totality, but she has some policies that I agree with.
Anything you want to ask? We loved hearing all that, but do you want to ask a question too, or no?
I did want to ask a question, I guess, to Dan about how can we change the narrative that the vice president is not a strong leader in foreign policy. Because I come here and I hear people say that President Trump was anti-war, right? Which I just don't agree with. And I'll run through a little bit. I don't want to take too much of the time. But in terms of foreign policy, he said that Israel or the United States should attack Iran's nuclear facilities, which they have a right to under international law. He ripped up the Iran nuclear deal, which was working. He increased the drone war strike, the 2,243 drone strikes in just 2 years as president. When President Obama, he did more than President Obama in 8 years. He kept us in Iraq, kept us in Afghanistan, and he had a 330% increase in civilian deaths in Afghanistan under Trump. He bombed Syria twice and bombed Somalia. Like, people are saying he's anti-war when the facts does not bear that out as much. And in terms of Israel or Gaza, he basically told Netanyahu, you can do what you want with the West Bank, right? So my question to Dan really is like, how do we change this narrative about Vice President Harris not being a capable leader for foreign policy? Because in my opinion, President Trump is actually the riskier choice when it comes to foreign policy than Vice President Harris.
Nicholas, you're a very well-informed person. I'm not saying I couldn't fact check a little bit of what you said, but you're very well-informed. Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say, first off, she should hire you to be one of her foreign policy spokespeople, because you just, with passion and research, just spit it out. Look, I think this goes to something, and I think it was Ken Melman who said this over the summer, that if you just walk down the street to the average person, they would say, under Donald Trump, DC was chaos and the world was relatively calm. Under Joe Biden, DC has been relatively calm and the world has been full of chaos. We can debate who is responsible for that. Who, if Israel and Iran truly go toe-to-toe in 6 months, would you rather have, in the Oval Office, if China really does threaten Taiwan or attempt to go to war with it? But the problem just becomes that on a macro level, everything you described was, relatively speaking, low-level conflicts kind of under the surface. And if you look at Joe Biden, where he kind of lost the public on foreign policy, was the Afghanistan withdrawal. And I can give you 20 reasons about why that happened and who was at fault and what was, But at the end of the day, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat's a lonely orphan. And nobody would say that exit from Afghanistan was pretty. And look, for the other problem is people look at Joe Biden as too old and not really capable of at his stage of life, going toe-to-toe with world leaders. And Harris is just assuming that baggage. The only way I think she'll change this is to get in office and show people. And I hope she gets the opportunity, and I hope she proves people wrong, that she's tough and she can guide our country through some difficult moments.
Nicholas, thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for joining. Appreciate it.
Real quick, I would just say, I go back to the comment that someone made in the chat yesterday. It's WW3 versus World War III. I think that was very apropos of what a lot of people are looking at right now.
WWE, not WW3.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm an old school. I have WWF, remember? So I go back. Anyway. Look, to Dan's point, I would just tweak one thing. It wasn't just the botched with Afghanistan withdrawal. It was the response after that, the lack of admission as to how horrible that went, and the idea that they stuck by it. They screwed our allies, the 13 soldiers that lost their lives. The response to Afghanistan was horrible. So it wasn't just the operation itself, but the post handling of it. The other thing is, I want to underscore something that Dan said in the context just now of after the election of, winning has 1,000, owners and no one, when you lose, everybody blames you. That's going to be very true in this election. And I think the interesting thing is, especially if Donald Trump wins, there's a lot of things that I think will get overlooked. We do this all the time in parties where we don't look at some of the underlying things that we could have done better, and we all just celebrate. And I think, there'll be plenty to go around. And it's always interesting to me of what doesn't get said of the winning team.
Jacqueline, welcome in. Do you walk around Manhattan with a MAGA hat on?
I did just buy a red hat, but that's about as far as I'm able to go. I'm in Midtown. I'm in Midtown Manhattan, and I feel like this is like even just putting the name Trump in my name was scary for me.
Will
So
this be your first, second, or third vote for Trump?
this is my third vote.
Yeah. And are you from New York City originally?
Yes, I'm a born and raised New Yorker, and I feel like I also have a media background, so I feel a little bit like I've truly been hiding for some time. But at this point, I feel like, and I'm so impressed with this platform. I can't thank you enough. I feel like this is the type of conversation that we all need to be having more of. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that and for joining. Well, I have one question for you, and then open the floor. Who do you think is going to win and why?
No idea. If you would ask me, almost like I feel like I change just about every hour. I have started to see the thing that really shifted my thinking on this is that my husband's from New Jersey. Over the summer, we spent some time at the Jersey Shore. It's the first time that I had seen quite a bit of public support for Trump. It was the first time I had in that area, right, in that region of the country. I had never seen Trump, make America great again. I had never seen this signage in New Jersey before publicly and so loud and supportive. And it made me think like something has shifted. Like there are more of us out there, who are, and then of course I've always known that we're out there, but it just to see it on the East Coast was surprising.
Yeah. What question do you have for us or comment you want to make?
So my question is for Sean. So I am a dietitian. I have been following the sort of, there's a little bit of a meltdown happening, and in some ways, a little bit of an existential crisis happening within my area of work and the health professional community as it pertains to the Make America Healthy Again conversation. There's a lot of this that the intention is so incredibly positive. I mean, I think everyone probably in here and around the country would agree with that. But when I look at the actual, and I've tried to research this to the extent that there's public information about it. When I look at the actual description of policy, the certain things that have been the focus of what Make America Healthy Again stands for, I'm concerned that a lot of it is not actually evidence-based. And this is where the existential crisis comes in, because there's so much discussion now about, it seems to be a very right-wing versus left-wing coded, trust the science versus don't trust the science. We can't trust the experts, right? And at the same time, I am wondering, what happens if Trump is elected, and what happens to the questions about the obesity epidemic, the concerns about our food supply. Do we have any expertise in the room, or are we going with social media influencers to drive policy? I'm confused by this, because I feel like, a huge part of why I have voted for President Trump the last 3 times is because I am in favor of less government, of less regulation, right? And I feel like a lot of what is being talked about sounds like very heavy regulation, banning certain ingredients that actually are legally permitted around the world, things like that. So I'm just
if President Trump wins, come back, because we'll do an hour on this. This is a hugely important topic. Sean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I listen, again, I think it's a lot more than we can add. First of all, thank you for the question. I as somebody who has from time to time tried to eat healthy, and I have become consumed with this issue. Because there are, like, for example, I'll just give you 2 things. Like you think, okay, I'll eat more fruits and vegetables. And then you hear, gosh, did you know that these fruits and vegetables are raised with these pesticides that are hurting you? I went to my doctor a while ago, as you can tell, very fair-skinned Irish guy. I learned the lesson about sunscreen too late. And I said to my dermatologist, hey, I saw this thing where I'm putting sunscreen on, but it's got these harmful chemicals. And she goes, yeah, you should use the brands that don't have it. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Why are we allowing? I mean, I think the problem with what you're bringing up is there's some stuff that is true. Like when I asked my dermatologist, I said, hey, I'm concerned because I'm putting on, I won't name brands, but these easy ones when you walk into CVS or Duane Reade or Rite Aid, but then they have all these chemicals in the back. And she said, yeah, you should avoid them. And I'm going, well, wait a second. Then why are we why are we doing that? And then same thing with foods, where I thought, okay, I'm eating healthier because I'm eating this. And I would ask, a dietitian or a nutritionist, and they'd say, well, try to avoid the ones with this. I go, well, then why are we putting it on the shelf? Right. And so, I'll take, for example, the red dyes. You start to see some of these things that came out of the hearing where you find out that they're banned in other countries because they're linked to cancer and all this stuff. And so I will leave it at this. I think the problem with the issue that you're raising, and I share it, which is, well, I assumed, and I'm with you, I'm a small government kind of guy. But I got to be honest, I walk into a doctor's office and the doctor says, do this, right? Then I go, okay, all right, that's what I got to do. And then I start to hear, well, nobody's ever told them that red dye number, whatever, is linked to cancer. And I go, well, then why the heck am I drinking it? Why is the government allowing it? So to me, this is a conundrum. I don't want government. I don't want big government, but I also assume if the FDA is telling me that it's okay, and then you start to hear all this stuff about how many people are on what boards and they're being linked to it and it's I don't know if you've listened to Callie and Casey Means, but to me, I'm one of these guys that trust the experts, right? If an architect comes to my house and I say, I really want a beam that goes here, and he says, if you do that, it's load bearing and your house is going to collapse, I trust them. And so the problem is that we've trusted healthcare professionals, and I think they're well-meaning, but the problem is that when the FDA tells you something and then you find out afterwards, well, it's banned in 18 other countries because it's linked to something, where's the line? And that's, again, I'll leave it at that to say, as consumers, we trust certain agencies to protect us. And if we start to find out that they're not doing that, and the last example, Dr. Fauci going out and saying, well, 6 feet, he's like 6 feet, 5 feet, 4 feet, I made it up. It doesn't instill confidence. And that's the problem, is I go, wait a second, you literally made that up. I was measuring okay, well, these guys are supposed to be smart. And now we find out. So where's the line? What do we believe? What don't we believe? I think you're asking a great question. And I think when Trump wins, we'll have to have a greater discussion about where, who's going to oversee what and where and how.
Jacqueline, I will go ahead. Go ahead. You go.
No, I totally hear you. I mean, this is a little bit of the conflict, right? Though, is that actually Red 40, for example, it's not banned in other countries. It's under a different name. It's the same chemical structure. It's under a different name in the European Union and a number of countries around Europe, right? Certain ingredients, a lot of this actually has to do with trade and
right. Well, no, but that's the funny part about this, is that I was the assistant U.S. trade rep. I sat there and talked about why we should allow GMO and other things into Europe and why they were protecting certain things. And so for me, this is even more personal because I was the one advocating for US products to make it into market in certain places in terms of market access. And now I'm being told, well, these pesticides that we're putting on things, and I'm going, God, did I actually advocate for something that could be hurting people?
Jacqueline, just to clarify that organic, even organic farming, and that's why there's just so many questions here. Even organic farming, there's a great deal of use of pesticides. They're just USDA organic pesticides. So then we're okay with the USDA with that type of pesticide use, but we're not okay with conventional pesticide use. And then I worry about our farmers. It just brings up so many additional questions. But I will say that, Sean, please keep eating your fruits and veggies. I don't care if they're conventionally grown or organic. We need that. This is the number one thing that will actually fundamentally change our health trajectory, is to be eating more produce more often.
Yeah. Jacqueline, thank you. Come back off and tell us how that red hat plays in Midtown. Thank you. All right. Back with us now, Brian Lee. Brian, who is a farmer. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, Brian has transitioned from working on the seed because of his MS to now starting an incredible project, Chapin Road Farm in Massachusetts. Less than 3-hour drive from Manhattan. I looked yesterday, Brian. So Brian, yesterday you joined us with 5 Instagram followers. What's happened in the last 24 hours?
It's been quite a, it's when something this surreal happens, it usually was on the ocean for me. So it was
it's a land-based. This is a land-based experience.
It's a land-based surreal moment. Yeah. So it's hundreds and hundreds of followers. It meant so much to me. I've been thinking about how I would try to phrase it, but I can't. People from the community reaching out from all over the world. It was, and I tried to respond to as many as the messages that I could. Typing gets a little tough for me with I don't have much feeling in my hands, but it just really meant the world to me. And, I just,
All right. Well, Brian, we're super excited. You're over 900 now, by the way, because people are watching and going. So let's get them over 1,000 before we finish the program in a couple minutes, and we'll warn our affiliates we're going to run a little bit over. So Brian's farm is just getting started, and he needs some help. He's got a great Instagram account. But Brian, there are two things we talked about yesterday you want help with. One is building a website, and the other is getting help with a grant proposal, right?
Yeah, yep. My mom's actually dog sitting for her sister on Long Island, but she was nice enough yesterday to register chapinroadfarm.org. So yeah,
okay, so we've got the URL, but we need the architecture built.
Yeah.
So what's great about this for us is I guarantee amongst those 900 people, there's Trump voters and there's Harris voters, right? This is the two-way community. Everybody agrees, Brian, we're going to help you. So if you know how to build a website, and I guarantee you there are people on here and you're willing to volunteer to help build the farm, email Brian, Chapin Road Farm, CHAPIN Road Farm @gmail. Or if you know how to write grants, just email Brian. Okay, there's the email address. Just email him and say you're willing to volunteer. Again, we want volunteers. Don't pitch Brian on the business. Just if you got a little time, the initial website doesn't need to be the greatest thing in the world. Easiest grant proposal in the world to write. So send Brian an email, and then you'll come back on with Brian, and everyone here in the community will applaud you for your volunteer help. And Brian, keep us posted. We'll keep plugging the site because I'd like to get you to 2,000. And I know there are people on here who've been on Instagram for years who don't have 900 followers and are like, why does Brian get them? And the answer is because Brian's building a great thing and we're going to help him. And as I said, less than a 3-hour drive from New York. So I'll be coming up regularly for vegetables so I can fulfill
Jacqueline's going to be happy on that.
Yeah,
we're
exactly. We'll drive
right on the Connecticut border here. So.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Anything else you want to say?
Besides just the gratitude I have for this community, like I've appreciated this platform since you guys started. But yesterday just really cemented to me like how special this is and what you're building. And it's just, it really means so much to me. Personally.
Well, that's awesome. We're excited to help you, and we look forward to staying in touch. And you'll come back regularly. And again, whoever helps you build the website and write the grant proposal, let's have you both on with them. Okay, Brian. Thank you. Oh, all right. Thank you, Brian. All right.
All those lobbyists who are watching, who I know you're doing nothing until January, and some of you are approach people. Please help him.
Yeah, just let's get the website up. Let's get the website up by election day, and let's get the grant proposal done by a week from today. That's our goal. All right, so a bunch of stuff to tell you about. Tonight, I'll be on at 6 p.m. Eastern time with the normal program. I'm looking here for all my information. For some reason, I can't find it. Let's see. 6 p.m. tonight, two-way tonight. Drew Holden, Jill Alper, and the return of Jonathan Alter, which will delight many of you. Jonathan Alter's coming back on. But so tonight, and Drew Holden's got some new polling data on the Democrat and Republican appeal to young non-white men. So we'll look at that polling data. Super exciting. All right. Then election night, as we've told you, will be here at 6 Eastern time and onward through the night. And very soon you'll get information. But as I said, this is going to be a very two-way election night experience. We'll be aggregating everything. So you don't need to try to figure out what Steve Kornacki said 5 minutes ago. We'll know. John King, Bill Hemmer, David Wasserman, everybody who's got good stuff election night, we'll aggregate it all and we'll talk about it here, and we'll have experts on, and it'll just be a big rolling conversation of the kind that, if you're in media or politics, you get to have. But for people who don't have access to that, please save room for us on one of your screens on election night. And again, we'll tell you how to log on. Paul and Audra, have I forgotten anything? I can't find my list. Is that, Sean. Two more things. One, incredible support from the community for two-way. We're just asking people, if you like what we've done, you want to support what we're doing going forward, make a contribution, go on twoway.tv/contribute. If you can afford it, we'd love for you to kick in. We're very grateful to those of you who already have, including some very big contributions that are quite wonderful, but the small ones are wonderful too. So $1, whatever you want to give, thousands of dollars some people have given, please contribute. Lastly, the three of us are about to tape Sean's show, which will air tonight at 6. Thus, I will be going head to head with myself at 6
It's
Eastern
like
time.
dueling pianos.
Yeah,
Dueling pianos.
I will be on Sean's show on YouTube, taped, old stuff, not that interesting.
No,
or
but
live.
JD Vance is coming right after you. So,
Yes,
you
yes.
know,
So
you're
Sean's got
competing.
JD Vance, but I got Drew Holden, Jill Alper, and Jonathan Alter. Okay, you can't match that. So 6 o'clock Eastern. What I
Vance.
recommend is watch me live and then watch me taped, and you pick which way you want to do it. Either way, they're both available on demand right after they air at 6. All right, guys, it's 5 after. We got to get ready for Sean's taping. Anything you guys want to say?
Just real quick before I forget it, tomorrow we're gonna do Sunday Night Live to go through the early vote. If you guys are data geeks, Sunday night at 7 o'clock Eastern, the Patriots play at 1, so you should be free of football. But we're gonna do 7 o'clock live. Go through the early vote data if you are a data geek on my YouTube channel.
Dan,
as my old boss Terry McAuliffe would say, we love everybody. I will watch you both.
And remember, for the Catholics out there, I'll spread my Catholic guilt. It is All Saints Day, a holy day of obligation. So,
all right. And tomorrow, if you happen to be one of the 100,000 plus people in Happy Valley watching the Ohio State play Penn State, come say hi because I'm planning to be there. Yeah. Okay. So see you tomorrow at the game. What are they, number 2 versus number 3?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Or two versus 3 or 2 versus 4. I can't remember.
Yeah. And if you're in New York City on Sunday,
I'll be good luck.
Oh, Dan's in the marathon on Sunday.
Runners running the marathon. So
have you run the New York Marathon before?
This will be my first.
Yeah.
Yep,
what do you plan to eat Saturday night and Sunday morning?
I am eating like a teenager these days. It is all bland, heavy on the carbohydrates and lean protein and a lot of Gatorade right now. So I will.
All right.
Well, Jacqueline said that the red dye number 6 is cool.
If I'm the finish line's in front of my house. So if I'm back,
right.
if I'm back in time, I'm going to bring that giant Dan mask and cheer you on. Let me know what time you're going to. Let me know what time you're going to finish.
Probably around 12:45.
12:45. All right. I'll come out at 12:15. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I will see you double at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Because if it's Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time, it's 8 o'clock Central, and it's the morning meeting. Have a great day.